Welcome back to Coast. Robert Knight has been photographing rock stars for more than 40 years, but in my view, he's just every bit as interesting as any of the big names that he has photographed, and he's photographed them all: Led Zeppelin, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, Stevie Ray Vaughn. The list goes on, and has somehow got to know them well enough for them to trust him to tell him some pretty intimate secrets, in particular about UFOs and paranormal experiences. And Robert, I got to meet him a couple of years ago. He's now opened a gallery at the Las Vegas Hilton here in southern Nevada, and is a really fascinating guy who's got some interesting projects going on. Robert, thanks for being on the program.
Oh, thank you very much, George.
Let's start this way. To introduce you to our audience, how is it you became a rock photographer? How is it you became a rock photographer interested in UFOs? And how is it you talked all these big-name stars into trusting you with what could be embarrassing stories?
Well, when I was a young man growing up in Hawaii, I was around a lot of guitar players, and I unfortunately was left-handed and couldn't play the guitar, and I needed to come up with an idea of how to be able to still be in the room with these folks. And I ended up going on a trip to London when I was 16 years old, and there was a movie called Blow Up, had a band in it called the Yardbirds, had a photographer in it starring David Hemmings, and a little bell went off in my head, and I said, I want to become a photographer, and I'll photograph rock guitar players. So I went back to Hawaii, caddied for 6 months in order to buy my first Nikon camera, and basically sat down and said, okay, now how do I do this? And my parents were sort of putting pressure on me to pick a school to go to, and I noticed that Bill Graham in the summer of 1968 basically had everybody booked into the Fillmore that I ever wanted to shoot. So I convinced my parents I needed to go to the San Francisco Art Institute and spent most of my time at the Fillmore. And the very first concert I ever photographed was Jeff Beck, and I think the second was Jimi Hendrix.
That's a pretty good start.
Yeah, and the promoter in Hawaii, Tom Moffat, who, was the main guy there, we became friends, and I saw this band called Led Zeppelin on their opening night in America. I was the first person to shoot them. And I went on to Tom about this band, and I said, Tom, you need to book this band in Hawaii, and he did. And I quickly left the school, went back to Hawaii, and we became fast friends. So that world kind of developed, and Jimi Hendrix came to Hawaii in 1969, and I got to spend some time with him, and I had had a rather unusual UFO sighting as a child, and I had always had a strong interest in it, and he had been writing some amazing songs that kind of indicated something, so I sort of brought the topic up, and he willingly talked about it.
Okay, we'll hear Hendrix Story in a minute, but still keeping with the theme of how you get these guys to spill the beans. After you hear this conversation with Hendrix, and I want you to tell the story, I mean, do you make a point of, hey, I'm going to ask all these rock guys along the way?
Well, I think that, I have a bit of a reputation for being very interested in the topic, so a lot of people actually come forward to me and say, what do you hear? What do you know? And then they share experiences with me. And as late as last night, I was having dinner with one of the members of Aerosmith, Brad Whitford, and he told me two amazing stories. So it's like it doesn't take much. I think if they can find somebody that won't make fun of them and go, you're crazy or you're high on drugs or something, they'll tell you the story. And Sammy Hagar, I had heard this rumor. And I actually saw him backstage before a concert here in Las Vegas, and I asked him, and he went into unbelievably lucid details with me and sharing me this most intimate thing that had happened to him, and I was just startled by it. It was amazing.
I know you told me this story about Sammy Hagar more than a year ago, and here it is making a big news. We've got a clip. We've got a clip from one of his interviews with Howard Stern, I think it is. Can we play that now, Jason, and we'll listen to that, and then I want to hear about your conversation, Robert.
So I'm laying in bed. I feel like I'm dreaming that there's these little alien, two guys sitting in a ship up on the hill behind us about 11 miles away, and there's like this, I could see they had something plugged into me. I mean, a wireless thing. I didn't know what to call it, right? Wireless remote system.
What did these guys look like?
Like the way a lot of aliens, when you see pictures of them. And they said, oh, he's waking up. They didn't say it, but you know what I mean? It's all mental telepathy.
Right.
Oh, he's waking up. And I felt I was plugged into. Now, I don't know if they were downloading into me now that I know about computers, or if they were uploading out of my head into seeing what I knew, like an experiment. And they go, oh, he's waking up. We got to end it. They hollered out some weird numerical code. I mean, like, it would not have our numerical system, like 9, 11, 16, and I went, whoop, thing was up. And I woke up, my room was white, I couldn't see anything, and it just went, pow, black. And I laid there shaking so bad. I mean, it was just really real. And it changed my life. How about that?
Robert Knight, is that basically the story he told you?
Yeah, a little bit more detail, but the thing I want everybody to know is that Sammy didn't put this in a book to sell books, because I think he's wanted to tell this story for some time. I've known about it for some time, and I think this has happened to him more than once. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I got the distinct feeling that he had this happen to him repeatedly through his life, starting when he was really young. He talked about it almost like an umbilical cord sort of stretching between his bed, and he could actually see a ship off in the distance. And, I think, it was just for him, I think these guys have a real open mind. I think musicians and artistic people are much more open to things than the average guy. And I think, he was going with it. I don't think he was exaggerating. I think he truly believed this was happening to him. And I, don't sit there and go, I think you're crazy. I absolutely encourage to hear more and more and more. And I've known him a very long time, and I know he wasn't kidding me.
And he said that he wasn't drinking or doing drugs in those days.
No, he was actually quite young when it first started, so I think it was sort of pre all of that. I mean, you can tell when someone's, trying to lead you on. But, I mean, Sam was absolutely, livid about this, and he went into great detail. And he actually believed that they gave him information. It changed the way he did things. And it ties very much into what, Jack Valet has written about in some of his reports and books of people having contact and information going back and forth. And Jacques is a good friend of mine, and, I told him the story of Sammy. I mean, it's amazing, these guys, and I think they're reticent to come forward, but when they can get somebody to listen, they'll tell you.
I wonder if you have a theory about, is it creative people are more open-minded and that's why they see these things, or creative people are more open-minded and that's why they're contacted by some other kind of intelligence?
I think all of the above, George, because obviously if you read Ballet and if you read John Alexander's books, the phenomena is real. What it is, that's still up to debate. But obviously they're putting on some sort of human manipulation or some sort of situation where they're influencing people. And I think if you influence musicians, you influence millions of people. If you influence people in television, you influence millions of people. And, I think musicians, artists, creative people are far more open to things and far more open to possibilities. And also I think they stay up late. I think they look to the skies, and many of the artists that have told me stories have been out late at night, look up into the night sky when it's quiet, and they notice things. And
what does it do? How credible, as witnesses, how credible are they? We read about rock and roll, their lifestyle and substance abuse and things of that sort. Does that make them less credible as witnesses, though?
No, I think, I think if someone is in some inebriated state and they're going on, but I think that a lot of these people, the party thing is exaggerated. There's a lot of time that they're, very normal people, and they go on with their lives. And a lot of these people weren't interested in the topic in the first place, and suddenly this experience has happened to them. And I find those stories more compelling than somebody who spent his entire life looking into UFOs and he sees something. I think when it happens to someone who's not expecting it, those are the best stories.
Well, what do you think about the amount of attention that Sammy Hagar's tiny story in this book has generated? Now, is that it says probably more about mainstream media than it does about Sammy Hagar, I guess?
I'm not sure. I mean, I've heard a rumor that this book's going to enter #1 on the New York Times bestseller list tomorrow. I mean, I went to buy a copy of the book over at Town Center in Las Vegas tonight, and they said, "Oh no, we're back ordered. You can't get your hands on this book right now." So whatever's in that book, it's hitting a topic for the average person because they're flying off the shelves for him. So, and like I said, I don't think he led with this story to sell books. I think it just was an important part of Sammy's life.
You mentioned about the Aerosmith guys. Did you tell me before the program, while we were off the air, they're listening in tonight?
Yeah, I think Brad and Joe Perry are listening. I know Joe Perry sent me an email earlier, and he said he listens to the show all the time. He's on the East Coast, and Brad's in Los Angeles right now. I've been working with Brad's son in a new band that I'm helping develop with another young guitar player named Josh Gooch. So Brad's been in L.A. all week supporting Harrison, and we've had a lot of time to talk UFO stories, and it was fantastic, the stories